The Anglo-Chinese Wars, also known as the Opium Wars, are famous mainly for causing the end of the last Chinese dynasty, the Manchu dynasty. Most people know this and this alone about the wars, but nothing else apart from it being fought over opium. I will be discussing the more in-depth and detailed version of the Opium Wars by talking about the many sides per each conflict, their motives for participating, and eventually their gains and losses. In the late 1600s, the quickly expanding British Empire established its first trade posts in China, who is currently under the rule of the Qing or Manchu dynasty, the 8th and final dynasty of China. Most trade at the start of the relationship was for silver, but other goods were soon introduced. Opium, a plant that grew commonly in India, had many uses for the people of China. It could be smoked as a drug, used as a medicine, and was generally high of value. Britain continually brought this into China, using the wealth from it to purchase valuable Chinese luxuries such as silk, porcelain, and tea. It was a fair deal for a while, but times changed. The Chinese had known of opium for a while, but it was very limited. With the introduction of mass quantities of opium by the British, the demand skyrocketed and thousands of people were addicted. By 1820, it is said that 10,000 chests of opium were imported per year, and that number only grew. By 1839, the year the war would begin, Emperor Daoguang of China abolished the trade. Lin Zexu, a viceroy of the emperor and the man in charge of the abolishment, would confiscate about 20,000 chests of opium that year. They offered no compensation to the British and followed up their actions by blockading the import of opium and arresting British merchants. The war would begin that year following the blockades and would continue for the next 3 years afterwards. The First Opium War commenced as Britain fought the Qing dynasty in many locations, mostly in naval conflicts. The war consisted of about 20 major battles throughout the 3 years of the war. Throughout it, one thing was constantly true: the British were winning. Collectively, they had suffered about 370 deaths and 450 wounded, whereas the Chinese had suffered around 18,000 to 20,000 combined wounded and deaths. The rule of incredibly high Chinese losses in comparison to the British was true for just about every battle, as Britain consistently came out on top. By the end of the war in 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was signed. This treaty, which was unjustly in favor of the British, opened 5 ports to British importation of opium, granted the British the Empire the city of Hong Kong, and forced China to pay 21 million silver taels as compensation for the destroyed opium. The aftermath of the First War resulted in delegitimizing the appearance of the Qing dynasty, leading to events like the Taiping Rebellion in 1850. The British, although their original treaty from the First War was highly in their favor, were not appeased with the results. They wished for all of China to be open to their trading, where the Treaty of Nanking only granted them access to 5 ports. They also wanted the opium trade to be officially legalized in China, and for it to be excluded from taxing. The Chinese emperor was quick to decline these demands, which only raised tensions and brought the war closer. As the British realized another show of force was necessary, they contacted France, Russia, and the United States for help in the oncoming war. The French participated immediately as a result of the death of a French missionary at the hands of Chinese authorities. The United States aided slightly to the effort, sending in around 700 men to China. This wasn't directly because of the alliance with Britain and France, but rather due to a Chinese attack on an American ship. Russia, while being in the alliance, sent no military aid. British and French troops began their first attacks on the Pearl River forts. Chinese troops defending these forts were told not to resist, resulting in a quick victory at Pearl River. From there, Britain and France continually pushed northwards. The Chinese, now dealing with not only Britain and France pushing northwards, but still the ongoing Taiping Rebellion, were forced into admitting defeat. In 1858, the treaties of Tianjin were written, ending the fighting temporarily and adding British power to the east. The treaties would have opened 10 more ports to trade with the Western countries, allowed all foreign vessels to use the Yangtze River, and will force the Chinese to pay 4 million taels of silver to England and 2 million to France. Upon seeing these demands, the emperor once again refused, and the second half of the war commenced the same year. This second half was centered around the Taku forts, as 3 major battles occurred there. The first attack resulted in English and French victory, but they returned the forts to China as part of a peace treaty. The second occurred in 1859, when 21 British ships forced their way into the Baihe River and shelled the forts. The British lost this attack due to low tides and constant return fire from the forts. It would have been a greater loss to Britain had a ship from the United States, who had already declared neutrality in the conflict, not provide cover fire for a British retreat. In 1860, a third attack on the forts occurred using British, French, and even some Chinese troops. This final attack resulted in the capturing of the forts, and eventually the Convention of Beijing. This convention forced the Chinese to agree to the Treaty of Tianjin, to open Tianjin as a trade port, and most significantly, to legalize the opium trade. The Qing dynasty, once powerful, now sat weak and robbed by Western imperialism. They would collapse after 50 years of steady decline in power, giving birth to the Republic of China, the China we know today, in 1912.